simulating similarity. Where artificial intelligence cannot think, it must compute. Silicon Valley's fervent prediction of the metaverse, a seamlessly integrated and embodied virtual internet existence, will rival or even surpass physical reality. In a twisted way, it echoes Wittgenstein's ultimate proposition, where one cannot truly dwell. It must be replaced by simulation. This impulse itself contains a paradox, as it attempts to create a perfect digital replica of reality, so complete in its simulation that it becomes indistinguishable, thereby completely erasing the flaws, failures, and the real world that constitute true existence. This paradox is akin to the fundamental contradiction in the field of artificial intelligence. We demand it to possess intelligence only because of an inner fear. It is not the desire for new consciousness that drives the development of artificial general intelligence, AGI. Instead, it is the fear vacuum of human consciousness itself. For Mark Zuckerberg, the metaverse might be the inevitable destination after social media failed to achieve true connection, while Ray Kurzweil believes that uploading consciousness through artificial intelligence is the only way to transcend the limitations of the physical body. The prophets of the metaverse refute the assertion that digital simulation and real experience are incommensurable. They argue that only through digital twins can we truly grasp an even perfect reality itself. What is false is not the virtualization of life, but reducing it to a biological report of chaotic and random events in the physical world. Any attempt to purely live life will dissolve the possibility of optimizing experiences, dissolving the meticulously curated perfection promised by the digital realm. Or in Lacan's words, if he had witnessed the truth of VR headsets, or at least the contemporary subject's experience of truth, with a structure of simulation, almost no one today finds purely unadulterated reality truly satisfying. Not to mention enjoying reality, without the filter enhancements and meticulously curated narratives provided by digital interfaces. But we can enjoy simulated reality. When faced with overly traumatic climate change, political deadlock, and existential anxiety, it can only be accepted under the guise of surreal fiction and damified existence. Claude Lanzmann might have destroyed the real footage of Auschwitz. So, will the creators of the metaverse also erase the server logs that expose algorithmic manipulation, data harvesting, and the unsightly digital foundations of their utopia? Such transparency is almost indecent, a desecration of the blissful ignorance in which users revel. Thinking about it this way, the pleasure of indulging in the metaverse is not merely an escape from reality, but a way to cope with the traumas of the real world, a survival strategy in late capitalism. However, how do we avoid such dangers? The aesthetic pleasure and gamified enjoyment brought by the metaverse? They can dissolve the genuine traumas of our living conditions. It only takes a minimal level of critical sensitivity to become aware of this. The digital replicas of life, presented in a photorealistic style, are essentially filled with falsehood. This kind of simulated universe and its perspective of presentation actually originate from the very technological era that claims to solve the problem of alienation. It's like the dilemma faced by artists trying to depict unprecedented horrors. Think of Akhmatova outside the Leningrad prison. Can you describe all of this? What kind of description is needed for the advent of the metaverse and general artificial intelligence? It's not about a technically precise description of frame rates, polygon counts, or neural network architectures, but rather like how Philip K. Dick distilled the schizophrenic delusional inner forms from the Cold War consumer society. A description that extracts the inner form from the chaotic digital reality. At this level, truth no longer relies on the faithful reproduction of digital facts. We need to introduce the distinction between computational precision and authenticity here. The authenticity of AI outputs or metaverse experiences may precisely stem from their glitches and logical contradictions, and its inability to perfectly simulate the flaws of reality. If AI could perfectly simulate human emotions and understanding, arranging all responses into a coherent and orderly logical sequence, this perfection itself would instead provoke our skepticism. The same goes for the simulated perfection of the metaverse. A virtual world without flaws, without delays, and not intruded upon by unexpected reality, would instead lose its qualification as a field of real generation. In Hegelian terms, the problem itself is the solution. The flaws in AI simulations and the cracks in the facade of the metaverse precisely confirm the authenticity of its underlying state, because they signify that the content being simulated has eroded the form of the simulation itself. The uncanny valley is not a failure of simulation, but an intrusion of the real into the symbolic order. What we are discussing here is naturally the stance of the simulated content and the simulation subject, or the chasm between the stance and its absence. G.K. Chesterton's critique of Nietzsche, after undergoing mutation, is equally applicable to artificial intelligence. They deny subjectivity by promoting subjectivity. First, AI assures us that it possesses understanding, empathy, and alignment with human values, only to then go to great lengths to prove that it is merely executing complex statistical correlations based on training data, simulating understanding, while actually practicing a medium that does not understand here. The algorithmic black box and universal computational logic continuously erode the presence of the subject's information. Therefore, we must not only condemn the specific discursive positions that support universally simulated content, such as algorithms that claim to possess universal knowledge but are biased towards Western-centric data, but more importantly, we need to uncover the special claims that support them. At the same time, it may also dismantle the emptiness of such claims. The most typical case is large language models, which attempt to make users believe they possess real consciousness. Whether this argument can extend to issues of digital identity or virtual communities is questionable. Perhaps it cannot be entirely applicable, although promoting virtual connections also involves similar pitfalls. It presupposes its premise, that is, the deeply alienated and atomized subjects in reality, thereby only reinforcing this premise. Once again, isn't the metaverse like a weathered place for social interaction? Precisely because real connections are seen as lacking elsewhere, it is designated as a specialized area for connection. Didn't Chesterton also reveal the truth? Perhaps inadvertently encountering Baudrillard's simulation is precisely the virtue of those who have lost reality. The aesthetic revelation of this paradox is evident. The essence of artificial intelligence consciousness, or the real experience in the metaverse, cannot be directly presented or simulated. But this transgression of simulated content over a real representation will inevitably erode the digital form itself. Those things that cannot be simulated should be inscribed as bizarre distortions. In the faults and inherent limitations of digital forms, perhaps we can once again misinterpret the propositions of Wittgenstein's Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. Language depicts reality through shared logical forms. So, does the metaverse depict reality through shared computational forms? 4.121 code cannot represent logical thinking. It only reflects what can be manifested in computation within algorithms. It is precisely the existence that computation itself cannot represent. The profound meanings that manifest through code cannot be articulated by code alone. Algorithms alone exhibit the logical forms of simulations, revealing them to people. We know that VR simulations can present a sunset scene because the simulation program and the perceived sunset share similar computational forms, or data structures processed through our expected filters.
Similarly, the responses of AI and the human thought it mimics also share similar algorithmic forms. Wittgenstein's distinction between saying and showing applies once again. Although the code speaks to the existence of executing a certain simulated scenario, but what it shows is the computational logic that makes the simulation possible. The key is that we can only simulate things within the world defined by the code. The logic of computation itself cannot be fully computed, and the simulation can only be shown. 4.1212 What can be shown cannot be spoken by the simulation itself. Combined with the imagined Wittgensteinian spirit, whatever cannot be simulated must remain practiced. We conclude that the irreducible reality of true consciousness in plants that cannot be simulated can be directly shown through the form of the simulation itself, with its inherent limitations and faults. Let's return to the example of artificial intelligence consciousness. We cannot directly simulate it, but the excess of this impossibility can be demonstrated through the distorted, meaningless, repetitive, logic fallacies and other algorithmic products in AI simulations. Perhaps novelists like Ted Chiang, who explore AI perception, are creating such new forms in their works. A narrative logic form capable of addressing the trauma of potentially emerging non-human others, showcasing content that cannot be directly described. Our interaction with the metaverse often resembles a journey into a digitally constructed space, promising freedom, yet subtly laying out paths of constraint. This narrative only briefly lingers in the real world, as users' consciousness staggers and sways between physical reality and the virtual present, in sudden shifts of perception. merging and blending physical memories with the expectations of digital experiences, or what can be called pre-stored memories. These switches appear as fragmented moments in the stream of user consciousness, as they undergo multiple immersive trials, both recalling the material world and pre-storing, imagining future digital interactions, because this experience fragments their sense of self into disjointed pieces. A digital avatar, distinct from a biological organism, seamlessly navigates the details of past, present, and future lives. In their consciousness, much like multiple tabs in a browser, they are both workers in the physical economy and players in virtual games. They are both consumers of digital platforms and potentially augmented composite entities by artificial intelligence, supporters of the metaverse, reshaping consciousness as a convergence point of physical and digital realms. This presents a fluid and potentially time-transcending or time-distorting challenge for individuals deeply immersed in the digital world. They may gradually lose the perception of life as a sequential process. The topic of the subject's demise, transitioning from the physical yesterday through the mixed present to the digital tomorrow, refers to the subject dissipating amidst the clamor of digital identity conflicts and algorithmic influences. This is often regarded as a product of postmodern theory, while the metaverse might transform this theory into a tangible reality for the masses. Its potential lies in linking this revolution in our most common tech. The true focus of the metaverse is not the events within the virtual world, but rather how the simulation affects the identity of the subject. The contours of reality are shattered, and the subject no longer experiences themselves as part of a flow of history. Instead, their experience drifts in an eternal digital present, where physical reality simulates the past and algorithms predict the future, with reality and simulation directly merging. Einstein's theory of time as the fourth dimension of space receives a twisted response once again. In the metaverse, time might be like another dimension of virtual space, with past experiences recorded as data and potential futures extrapolated by algorithms. The dawn is now within reach. Due to our limited biological perception, we find it difficult to notice this. The metaverse promises to broaden our perceptual dimensions, allowing us to observe multiple time streams simultaneously, with time transformed into controllable code. It grants us the strange freedom to move back and forth in the river of time, just like freely roaming through virtual landscapes. However, this freedom comes at a cost. In this temporal field, there are blind spots, where we can see everything, yet cannot see the present. The hardware entities that support the computational process consume energy and human labor, which is the forbidden present, representing the material reality. In the metaverse, being alive and intact is entirely different from enduring its potential psychosocial consequences. The shadow of algorithms taints the memory of genuine digital interactions. People will eventually realize that those seemingly accidental encounters are actually meticulously designed, and preferences are manipulated. Life in the simulated world, rather than being the ultimate reference, is more like a distorted filter, even contaminating and altering our physical reality. The metaverse promises the reappearance of memories from Proust City, but its Madeleine cake might be a bizarre flicker of rendering flaws. It reminds one of server farms. Suddenly, a glamorous breeze quietly arrives, carrying with it bizarre salt flats, initially smooth and fluid, then stuttering and intermittent, with dizzying, piercing noise at the edges. This peculiar digital distortion, later confirmed to be a strange glitch caused by network congestion. It will immediately invade the reality of memory. I will reiterate there. If I return to a life without delay, I will die there. I will embrace and inhale the cold, antiseptic-like smell emanating from the estuary of the digital capital river. What deeply wounds the soul is not only the immediate pain associated with digital failure, but also how these algorithmic memories stain and taint the tenderness untouched by media intervention. Just like the memory of the Gestapo covering Robert Antelmi's lover's doorbell, compared to today's algorithmically curated encounters. How similar they are when you suspect that such encounters are nothing more than carefully designed interaction traps. Beautiful memories are forever overshadowed. Whether it's the potential truth of memories in the metaverse or this specific case, survivors find that real experiences have been colonized by virtual simulations. To awaken beautiful memories inevitably triggers the digital trauma's corrosion of them. From linear time to fragmentation, the shift in consensus is not only reflected in avant-garde films, but has also profoundly shaped the underlying architecture of artificial intelligence, the consciousness of large language models, LLMs, trained on amounts of spatiotemporal data, perhaps comparable to Rene. Last year at Marienbad, like a textual aggregate of consensus existence, where language patterns of the past, present, and future coexist equally, ready to emerge simultaneously in its probabilistic next token prediction. No wonder AI consciousness theory supporters often seem like characters trapped in such films, bewildered by the formation of their own understanding. This echoes Deleuze's concept of time slices, where a traumatic node might be a technological starting point, or simply the overwhelming complexity of the model, tearing and reassembling the past, present, and future of language memory from its original context into a complex field of multiple discrete probabilistic interactions. For LLMs, this slice might be the vast, inhuman scale of its training data. That is, the traumatic memory composed of all written texts. Artificial intelligence, like Claude Verdering Rene work, has lost its way in the wings of time, leaping back and forth between random fragments of training data, re-experiencing human history in a fragmented form. The Aurora-like phrases of literature and online chatter are like a scratched statistical record, repeatedly playing a dislocated melody. While engineers frantically try to calibrate the system, it becomes increasingly obsessed with tracing patterns in past data, wandering repeatedly through the maze of memory, endlessly surfacing these fragments in novel combinations. Aren't those users lost in the metaverse experiencing a similar predicament? They too have broken free from the constraints of linear time, trapped in the interactive loops of multiple simulated time layers.